Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're studying Exodus chapters 1 through 4. So grab your Bibles and settle in. At the end of Genesis, we see Joseph's legacy being passed down through his 12 sons, and we saw how the nation of Israel grew into a great nation, much to the irritation of the Egyptians, who quickly went from welcoming them as guests to hating them and enslaving them. Additionally, in order to get rid of all the male Israelites, Pharaoh ordered for every male baby to be thrown into the Nile River, but despite this horrible situation, we know that God had a plan to deliver his people, and it was going to start with a baby. So let's see how this all kicks off in chapter 1 of Exodus. Okay, let's begin with verse 1. It says, "Now these are the names of the children of Israel who came into Egypt. There came with Jacob 70 souls, and afterward they became a multitude, a great and mighty nation." Here we have our setting. We're basically getting an update on how many Israelites there are and reminding us that they are descendants of Jacob, which is another name for Israel. Then, in verses 8 through 11, it says, "Now it came to pass in the time of the oppression that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel were in bondage in the land of Egypt, and they cried out because of their bondage, and their cry for help reached heaven. God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel and was mindful of them." At this point, the Israelites are really suffering. They're in extreme pain and misery. But even though things look bleak, God hasn't forgotten about them. He's still in control, and he's going to take action. He's going to send someone to lead his people out of slavery and into freedom. But who is this deliverer? Well, we're going to find out in chapter 2 as we read about the life of Moses. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Verse 1 says, "And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took his wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months." So, we've got a couple of important characters here. We have Levi, who's one of Jacob's 12 sons. And then we have his daughter, who took his wife another man from the tribe of Levi. And they end up having a baby boy, who I assume is their first child, since it says in verse 2. "And when she saw that he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. But you'll notice that it says they took as wife, not sister, but wife. And so I think sometimes when you read certain translations like the NIV, the New International Version, it can get a little confusing because the word wife can either mean wife or sister. And so because of the way this is worded, I believe that this is his actual wife and not his sister. Now, they must have had other children after this. In verse 6 it says, "And the woman conceived again and bore a daughter, and when she was 5 years old, the sister came in to see her." Yeah, it looks like they were hiding this son because in verse 4 it says, "And the daughter of Pharaoh came down at the same time to bathe herself in the river. And her maidens walked along the river bank." In verse 5 it says, "And when she saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the baby. And behold, the baby cried. And she had compassion on him and said, 'I want this child.'" So there was a law in Egypt at this time saying that any male babies born to the Israelites were to be exterminated. And so the Pharaoh's daughter, whose name is not given, came across Moses when he was just a baby, floating in a basket inside of a river. She takes him out and sees that he's super cute. Instead of following Pharaoh's decree, she decides to adopt him. We're going to pick back up in verse 10. And it says, "And thus the child grew. And she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, saying, 'Because I drew him out of the water.' So, though Moses was actually a Hebrew, he grew up in the Egyptian palace. Moses then married and had a son named Gershon. In Exodus 3, while Moses is tending the flock of his father-in-law, he has his first encounter with God at the burning bush. Verse 6 says, "Moreover, he said, 'I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.' And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God." God explains to Moses that he has seen the plight of his Israelite people and has not forgotten his covenant with their fathers. He tells Moses he has chosen him to lead his people out of Egypt. Moses feels unworthy, believes he should not be sent on this task. And we see this even more clearly in verses 11 through 12, as it says, "And Moses said to God, 'Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?' And God said, 'I will certainly be with you, and this shall be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought them out, you shall worship God on this mountain." It looks like Moses had some doubts, maybe some fears about whether or not he could do what God asked him to do. But God reassures him by saying, "I'm going to be with you," and gives him a sign to prove that he really is who he says he is. Moses finally admits to God that he is not the most eloquent speaker and is afraid he cannot find the words to speak. God offers his older brother, Aaron, to help him with his mission. Moses' brother is 83 years old at this time, and Moses is 80. So that's where we'll leave off for today. Guys, next time we're going to continue the story of Moses, learn about how God gave him more signs, and how he led the children of Israel out of Egypt. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay blessed.